There's a beautiful island in the Atlantic Ocean 25 miles off the coast of Brazil. It's easy to reach, has an endless beach line, steep rocks to climb, and vibrant tropical greenery. Yet there isn't a single hotel here, no one's hiking on all those rocks, no one's watching sunsets by the ocean, and you'll never see kids build sandcastles on the beach. People left this island a long time ago and will unlikely ever come back to live here. It's been long since taken over by creatures you'd rather never meet. Ilha da Queimada Grande has the highest concentration of venomous snakes in the world. It's the only natural habitat of the golden lancehead viper, one of the most dangerous snakes on the planet. Somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 of these critters live here. They say you're never more than 3 feet away from meeting one of them on the island. They're like life insurance salesmen. Lancehead vipers have venom that's 3 to 5 times stronger than that of their closest mainland relatives. Evolution helped them to develop it to keep them properly fed. Their only prey is birds that visit the island to rest. Lanceheads have to slither up the rocks for lunch and can't wait and trace those birds like other snakes. So they developed a super venom that works almost instantly. One legend says the snakes ended up in the middle of the ocean thanks to pirates. They were looking for a good place to hide their booty, their gold. The island was a perfect match. They also needed something to protect their treasures from any invaders. So they brought some snakes, and those multiplied quickly. A more realistic explanation involves not humans, but rising sea levels. Snake Island used to be part of the Brazilian mainland, but the sea isolated it from the rest of the country around 11,000 years ago. The snakes that ended up on that island were able to spread and thrive because they had no predators to bother them. And when people tried to, let's just say it didn't end well. Another island legend is about a fisherman who came here to pick bananas. He didn't expect he'd have the company of venomous snakes, and they were ecstatic about a new item on the menu. The fisherman ran for his life back to the water, but had been bitten before he managed to jump into his boat. A couple days later, his boat was found, but he didn't make it through the journey. Snake Island has long been uninhabited, but it used to have a human population for a few years, from 1909 to 1920. It was the lighthouse keeper, his wife, and 3 kids. Their task was not to let people on the island. According to another legend, one night snakes got inside their house through the windows. The parents grabbed their kids and tried to escape to the boat. Sadly, the snakes were faster. No one of the family had survived that visit. The lighthouse has been automated. Now the Navy visit it regularly to check if it's in order and keep visitors away from the island. It's both for the safety of people and for the good of snakes that are a critically endangered species. Some of those people are tourists looking for adventures. Others are smugglers that capture and sell lanceheads for $10,000 to $30,000. Animal collectors and scientists are willing to pay that price. There are rumors that the venom helps cure heart conditions. In the past, someone tried to set the island on fire to get rid of the snakes altogether and clear the land for agriculture. But the snakes have an important mission. It's crucial to study them to better understand the whole lancehead snake family and to treat people who get bitten by them on the mainland. Such incidents happen a lot in Brazil. If you really want to visit the island, you have to be one of those biologists or researchers who use it as a real-life lab to study the golden lanceheads. You must go through a lot of paperwork and get an official permission for a visit. There will also always be a doctor in the group to help others if something goes wrong, and Navy officers to make it safe. Elsewhere, there are places where people do survive alongside snakes. Musambo Island on Lake Victoria in Uganda is home to 2,000 snakes and less than 100 people. That's a ratio of over 20 snakes per person. Rock pythons, cobras, vipers. You can find those even in people's houses. Sometimes they share beds with the locals. They believe the island is home to many kinds of spirits that have transformed into snakes. The people are just guests here, and they must never ever hurt those snakes. Even if you find a cobra under your pillow, you aren't supposed to scream for help. You'll scare away good luck. And if you hurt a snake, Well, prepare to pack your bags and leave the island for good. There are also monitor lizards on the island. The snakes live in peace with them and the locals. They feed mainly on bird eggs and won't attack you first. The real danger of North Sentinel Island isn't the snakes, it's the people. The island, about the size of Manhattan and surrounded by corals, is home to one of the most isolated tribes on the planet, the Sentinelese. They're a hunter-gatherer society that doesn't welcome any strangers at all. The only safe outside visit took place in 1967. Based on what they saw back then, anthropologists guessed there could be anywhere between 50 and a couple hundred people living on the island. No one else in the world speaks or understands their language. Another dangerous place is Makajima Island in Japan, south of Tokyo. It's famous for the active volcano it sits on. There have been 6 eruptions in the last century alone. Poisonous gas has been leaking through the ground ever since the latest incident in 2000. For years, all residents and tourists had to carry gas masks at all times when on the island. When the siren went off, it was a sign to put it on immediately. It meant the sulfur levels in the air had dangerously risen. Luckily, it's been years since the gas masks were necessary. Volcanic activity made Lake Kivu in Africa a dangerous place as well. It sits exactly where tectonic plates are slowly moving away from one another. It makes the Earth's crust thinner and the volcanoes more active. That's why there are hot springs under Kivu that send hot water, carbon dioxide, and methane into the lake. Microorganisms that live in the lake generate more methane. All these gases remain in the water because the lake is really deep. This mix is denser than regular lake water, so the lake has unusual layers. Kivu is dangerous because all the gases trapped in it could find a way out. That would be a disaster. Saba is a tiny Caribbean island that's seen more storms in the last 150 years than any other place in the world. There were over 60 big hurricanes, 15 Category 3 storms, and 7 Category 5 ones, the most destructive a hurricane can get. If you want to try your luck, visit in winter. You'll be less likely to witness a storm, but landing will still tickle your nerves. Saba also happens to have one of the shortest and most dangerous runways on the planet, stuck between 2 rocky ridges. Bouvet Island is the loneliest and most remote one in the world. The nearest piece of land is 1,000 miles north, and the Antarctic coast is 1,100 miles to the south. Fewer than 100 people have ever been here, mostly scientists that used to work at a research station. If you decided to travel there, the journey would take days. If something went wrong, there would be no one to save you in time. Plus, 93% of the island is covered with a glacier, and there's just one appropriate place to moor a boat. Hey, sounds like fun! Sign me up! Not. Mount Washington in the US gets way more visitors, but not everyone comes back safely. It's known as the most dangerous small mountain on the planet. The winds here are the fastest on the surface of the Earth, reaching 200 miles per hour. Hey, let's go fly a kite, huh? Freezing temperatures and heavy snowfalls don't help the ascent either. Hikers are often steered away from trails and roads. Even if you do make it to the top, you'll experience overloads like on the peak of Mount Everest. Back in 2009, people in Ishikawa, Japan, saw a kind of rain no one's ever seen before. It was raining tadpoles. First reason is that the wind that day was so strong, it lifted and carried all those tadpoles away in no time. The second possible reason is that big birds, such as gulls, just dropped them while they were flying to their nests. Some scientists believe these creatures were hauled off the ground by a waterspout and rained down later. By the way, that day, people found not only tadpoles, but also frogs and fish instead of puddles. And yep, it can be raining worms too. Some people claim they've seen snake rains. Yay! It was a lovely spring in 1876 in Bath County, Kentucky. Mrs. Crouch was making soap in the yard of her house when she suddenly noticed it started raining meat. It wasn't ground meat. Those were large 3 inches in diameter chunks of meat falling right on her. 2 volunteers were brave enough to try that grisly-looking meat of unknown origin, and they said it tasted like lamb or deer. Well, they were no foodies, it turned out to be beef. Such cases were registered in Europe too, and the only logical explanation of meat showers is that buzzards flying over just drop meat pieces they save for lunch. With no luggage, their bodies are lighter and they can fly easier. Wow, I wish it rained donuts on me once. Rains aren't unusual for Oakville, Washington, but this one still doesn't have any solid explanation. Instead of common raindrops, people watch translucent jelly-like blobs falling down from the skies. These little things covered about 20 square miles. Those who got really close to that sort of rain said they felt bad the next day. Scientists studied those blobs and realized they contained human white blood cells, but other tests later showed it wasn't true. Some people think these might have been evaporated jellyfish, which resulted in rain, or it could simply be some waste from a commercial plane. Almost the same thing happened in 2012 in Dorset, UK. During a hailstorm, people found gelatin balls together with hailstones. Researchers collected these goopy balls and stored them in a fridge to study later. Turns out it wasn't necessary, since the slimy blobs didn't melt at room temperature. No one is sure even now about where the balls came from, but the first idea was that those were eggs of some aquatic animal carried by birds right up in the sky. Later tests proved that the jelly substance was a chemical that acts as a water lock and is used in many commercial products, even cables to protect them from water. Australian spiders are notorious, and to frighten people, they even learn how to rain. Spider rains are a pretty common thing for Australia because of ballooning. They climb up trees, then spin strands of silk, and that's why the wind can carry them away. Usually people don't notice it, but when it's wet, hundreds of spiders climb up to more desirable places. People say that when it rains or snows, it's possible to see spiders literally drift down on those webs as if they were balloons. If you ever travel to the Mekong Delta, you'll probably have a chance to see glowing balls rising up from the water and beelining straight into the air. The locals call these the Naga fireballs. Sizes may vary, so these reddish balls can be as tiny as a cherry and as large as a watermelon. During the night, you can see dozens and sometimes even thousands of fireballs. Scientists don't have any solid explanation why it happens, but it's probably flammable gas released by the marshy environment. Still, a local superstition claims it's all because of a giant serpent living in the Mekong. Tornadic waterspout is a tornado that doesn't occur on land, but on water. The speed of the tornado can be really high. The water is collected and partially pulled up. It manages to pull fish and even turtles up into the air. Actually, raining fish can also be explained by this weather phenomenon. The same might happen on the snow too, but it's really rare. There are only 6 pictures of snow spouts, 4 of which were taken in Ontario. This weather phenomenon requires that the water is warm enough to produce fog while the air temperature is really cold, next to impossible. Lava is red, sky is blue, I'm on bright side, and so are you. Okay, I made that up. But the part about the lava being red can change. That's true, especially if you see the lava flowing from Kauai Gen volcano located in Indonesia. It has a typical red color during the day, but at night it turns luminescent blue. No mystery behind it, just tons of sulfuric acid. This volcano also has the largest acidic crater lake in the world. The water there is so turquoise, you want to jump in immediately, but you probably already guessed that you should never ever do that. The fire on that volcano is also blue, and it's the largest blue fire in the world, rising up to 16 feet. In some places, water may look like glass. White salt ponds might look like windows or even portals to the world underneath. They have their look because of salt evaporation, and such lakes can be found in France and India. But the Cargill salt ponds in the San Francisco Bay Area look even crazier because of vibrant colors. The shades vary. It can be deep blue, grass green, orange, crimson, vermilion, and even magenta. The color difference is all about the different levels of salinity and tiny microorganisms living in those ponds. On the shore of the Baltic Sea in Kaliningrad District, Russia, there's an enigmatic national park called Dancing Forest. The pine trees are all crooked and twisted there. The forest didn't appear until the early 60s, when the pines were planted to make the dune sand in that area a bit more stable. It's probably the unstable sand that made those trees twist that way. Another reason why those trees are so crooked might be strong winds. Some people claim it has something to do with supernatural powers. They say this forest is a place where positive and negative energies meet. Locals believe if someone climbs through one of the rings in those trees, it'll add an extra year to this person's life. The throbbing hum in Taos, New Mexico has driven locals crazy since the 1990s. Low-frequency hum doesn't let you sleep normally. Even though scientists tried so hard to find the source of the hum, they failed. They blamed it on mechanical devices and even animals. The West Seattle hum, for example, was related to toadfish. Different variations of hum were also heard in the UK, Australia, and in some areas of the United States. Luckily, only about 2% of the world's population can hear it. Noctilescent clouds, or simply night clouds, are so rare because 1. They only form in summer, and 2. They can only be seen at latitudes between 50 and 70 degrees both north and south. To see those clouds, the sun should be already below the horizon, but the clouds still have to be in sunlight. It's possible for the highest clouds in the atmosphere, which are located about 50 miles up. We can't see them during the day because they're too faint. Fairy rings, also known as elf rings or pixie rings, are the enigmatic rings of mushrooms that appear in grasslands and forested areas. Scientists can't explain why these fungi can form nearly perfect circles. But the superstition claims that fairy dances would burn the ground, causing mushrooms rapid growth. In fact, it's partially true. The mushrooms grow in places where grass withered. The Amazon River, one of the longest on our planet, stretches for 4,000 miles, which is more than a drive from Vienna to New Delhi. But there's one river in South America that beats the Amazon River twice. First, it's wider. Second, nobody ever saw it. It's an Amazon underwater twin called the Hamza River, and it runs 2.5 miles underneath. Scientists found it 10 years ago, back in 2011. Don't blink, or you'll miss this rarest weather phenomenon. Red sprites are electrical discharges in the sky that look a bit like an aurora. It's super powerful, about 10 times stronger than any regular lightning, but it lasts just a couple of seconds. They were first photographed in 1989, and there are still very few photos and video recordings of this lightning. To make a video that can clearly show red sprites, it should be at about 7,000 frames per second. Well, I'm out. Snakes, crocodiles, big lizards. Not exactly a big deal. I mean, I guess they're less scary and Whoa, I take it back. Crocodile monitors are the only reptiles, other than snakes of course, that have forked tongues. No, we're not counting telemarketers. Somehow, that tongue helps them pick up delicious scents. Oh, and they're also called tree crocodiles. So, if you ever thought you'd be safe up in a tree if you got chased by a crocodile, better think again. They're full of surprises, including impressive tree climbing skills. They're quite aggressive, and luckily, they live far, far away, somewhere in the mountains of New Guinea. It may not be the giant dragon you saw in that fantasy movie last week, but the Komodo dragon is scary in its own way. The biggest living lizard even has its own island named after it. If you're ever in Indonesia, 300 pounds, 10 feet long, definitely worth a look, up from a distance. This lizard tends to dig a huge hole where it lays its eggs. As soon as the younger ones gain some strength, they run away from home and climb up the nearest tree. Not because they're being rebellious, more to avoid being eaten. Yep, they don't have the best parents in the world since, well, Komodo dragons sometimes eat other Komodo dragons. So, yeah. This turtle is all about breaking stereotypes. It looks like a dinosaur tried to crash the annual turtle Halloween party. A ridged shell, rough skin, and an insanely strong bite. Definitely not your average turtle. They live in swamps and freshwater lakes, and are definitely the largest and meanest looking of all snapping turtles out there. They're also the heaviest. The biggest one ever found weighed almost 250 pounds. Because of the algae growing on their shells, you might think you're looking at some sort of oddly shaped rock sticking out of the water. Finally, a scary movie starring a turtle as a bad guy. They walk at night and will literally eat everything they find. I'm talking snakes, opossums, water birds, squirrels, other turtles, and this is the impressive part, even some smaller alligators. I don't know if I'm ever going to swim in a lake again. Snake time, beady little eyes, crazy colored skin. Yeah, that's not the case with the Madagascar blind snake. These small reptiles look like skinny pink worms, and you're not exactly going to stumble across them in the wild. They live underground, and yes, they have really poor vision. They can only see blurry shapes and shadows. That's why they mainly hunt by smell. Blind snakes in general can grow up to a foot long, and they live on all continents except Antarctica. And speaking of snakes, I just can't leave out the cobra. Yellow, black, striped, so many patterns and colors, but there's one, you better hope you never meet her, the queen, the red spitting cobra. This one won't bite you to inject its venom. It's got a bit more of a rude approach. It contracts the muscles around its venom gland and spits some out right into your face. It seems like a way scarier tactic than a regular old bite, but there's a catch. This cobra's venom doesn't work if it falls on your skin or even gets into your mouth. For things to get really nasty, it has to get into your eyes. Phew! I mean, it's not like animals have such an amazing aim that they can nail you in the eye while you're running away, right? Well, there was an experiment, and those spitting cobras managed to hit a researcher's goggle-covered eyes 10 out of 10 times. Speaking of snakes, no wait, speaking of turtles, okay, snake-necked turtles, I got it eventually. When you see one roaming around, you might think it's a snake that's borrowing its buddy's house while it's out of town. But no, this turtle's neck is almost half its total size. How awesome would we look with necks like that? No thanks. They mostly chill in wetlands or swamps. Some of them are also known as stinkers, like me. And you can find out why if you catch one having a bad day. They can launch their stinky spray more than 3 feet. Well, that beats me. Pac-Man frogs, named after the greatest game ever, according to that weird guy you met at the grocery store, have round plum bodies with pretty big stomachs and mouths. They come in different colors, including apricot, strawberry, and albino. So red, yellow, and white, I guess. They're pretty lazy and not into climbing or even moving. They do have teeth though, and they won't hesitate to bite if you touch them. Luckily, they're not poisonous, but it probably wouldn't feel that good to have a frog hanging from your finger. No, I guess it wouldn't. This is a gharial, one of the strangest and most unique crocodiles out there. Check out that ridiculous snout. But it does come in handy when it's trying to catch fish. Unlike crocodiles that stalk and then lunge at their prey, gharials sense vibrations in the water. Then they whip their heads from side to side, then it's sushi time.
Nom, nom, nom.
Their jaws have more than 100 teeth. Gharials prefer to stay in the water most of the time, but sometimes they go out to chill if it's sunny enough. Just give them a clear freshwater river and they'll be happy. Yeah, no need to tell me twice. Lizards, snakes, frogs, step aside please, turtles are slowly but surely taking over this video. Strap yourselves in for the pig-nosed turtle. It's another freshwater turtle, this time with a long snout, complete with 2 big nostrils. It gets its name because, duh. That sweet snout allows it to breathe while the rest of its body stays underwater. That way, it can keep its body hidden. It's safe from any underwater danger too, since its belly looks sort of like the reflections made by nearby trees. It may look funny, but this turtle's had its own camouflage tactics and totally unique look for the last 140 million years. That's way before the dinosaurs went extinct. The leaf-nosed snake has a quite elongated body and a bizarre nose that looks kind of like a bendy leaf. Okay, so this Pinocchio snake comes from Madagascar and lives in trees, and you might easily mistake it for a branch. This snake chills during the day and goes out at night to find itself some delicious smaller reptiles, frogs, and even birds. Picture yourself on a sandy tropical beach. The sea, coconuts, palms, and iguanas? Yeah, these guys hang out everywhere, in the sand, up trees, on walls. They live all the way from Mexico to Brazil, and love to chill anywhere sunny. It's not just a relaxing hobby, they need the sunlight for its vitamin D, which helps them absorb more nutrients from their food. And no worries, iguanas aren't dangerous, as long as they don't feel threatened. If they do, well, luckily they're not venomous. But they do have sharp teeth that can cause some serious discomfort. Oh, and you know how those smaller lizards lose their tail when they get stuck or when you step on them? The same thing happens to iguanas. A legless lizard is a reptile that's always getting mistaken for a snake. It actually lost its legs and arms, not overnight of course, but through millions of years of evolution. Snakes lost their legs and arms even earlier. Still, there are real differences between them. If you get up close and personal with a legless lizard, you'll see that it blinks. But snakes, on the other hand, they don't even have eyelids. They protect their eyes with see-through membranes. Snakes actually have shorter tails, while legless lizards, well, they're mostly tail. Now you're totally ready for next Monday's quiz night, Reptile Edition. Gotta say it again, turtles are rocking this video. And this time, I mean literally. Mary River turtles look just awesome. It's not like you see a reptile with a green mohawk every day. But this little turtle has a secret. That's not its natural hair. It's actually algae. Ooh, slimy.
You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They are the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere! They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat. Except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew! No one expected such a strong storm. It's too dangerous to sail back to the land because of high waves and winds. But suddenly, you notice a small green island nearby. You and your friend are about 25 miles off the coast of Brazil. You were fishing and didn't notice black clouds obscuring the blue sky. You're approaching the unknown island and see a Coast Guard boat behind you. People from there are screaming something to you, but you can't make out the words because of the thunder. They tell us we should stay away from that island, your friend says. Despite the warning, you still sail since there's no other way out. Around the island, you notice sharp rocks sticking out of the water like knives in the dark. Now you realize what the Coast Guard warned about, but it's too late. Your boat hits a rock. The bottom is pierced. You start to sink. The rain and wind are getting stronger. Both of you fall overboard. Then darkness comes. You wake up in the morning because of the scorching sun and a dry mouth. Your friend and the wrecked boat are lying nearby. Apparently, you'll have to wait for rescuers to get out here. Now, in the light of day, you can see how dangerous the island's coast is. It's surrounded by rocks, and you're lucky you've survived. Getting out of here will be difficult. Together with your companion, you decide to look for coconuts and bananas. Your friend goes to the wreckage and pulls out a bag of medicine. Then, both of you leave the sandy beach and enter the dense jungle. A couple of steps later, you hear a strange hiss. You see your friend. His eyes are filled with horror. Goosebumps run down your back. You feel something alive crawling under your feet, and there's a lot of it. You look down and notice slithering snakes. There are dozens of them. They wrap around your legs, get into trees. They're everywhere. Don't move, your friend says. I think I know where we are. You want to ask him a question, but fear takes away your voice. He reads your face and answers the question. We're in one of the most dangerous places on Earth, the Brazilian Snake Island. These are not just some ordinary snakes. This is the golden lancehead, one of the most venomous reptiles in the world. You can find them nowhere else on the planet except for this land. They evolved here naturally, without other snake species intervention. That made their venom 5 times stronger than the venom of ordinary vipers. They're practically the only owners of this island. Nowhere else in the world will you find such a concentration of creeping reptiles on such a small piece of land. And now, they're glad that 2 big lunch meals have arrived. There's little chance of survival, but you're gonna try. The first thing you need to do is get out of your stupor and find a thick stick. This is your best tool right now. If you encounter a venomous snake, the best you can do is retreat slowly. But this time, there are too many of them. They're aggressive and hungry. Together with your friend, you fight off the snakes with a stick. But there's more and more of them coming. One of them falls on your shoulder from a tree and bites your neck. The poison instantly enters your bloodstream and affects your muscles. It feels like your body is melting. It becomes difficult to move, and your neck swells. Your friend grabs you and carries you deep into the jungle. Here, among the trees, you notice an old lighthouse. Yeah, this building really stands out here. Once a year, the Coast Guard visits it. Your friend breaks down the door and puts you on the floor. You're afraid you won't be able to survive the bite. Fortunately, your friend is a doctor. He injects the necessary medicine and saves your life. You have a few minutes to rest before more danger arises. Your friend tells you that the unique snakes appeared here thousands of years ago. This island was part of Brazil for a long time. Then, massive floods separated it from the continent. This part of the land was cut off from the whole world, which helped the formation of a unique ecosystem inside. Vipers that lived here evolved into golden lanceheads. They quickly became the main masters of the island and destroyed all the other animals. But how did they manage to survive without food, cut off from the whole world? They did it thanks to nature and evolution. This island is a transit point for many birds. They stop here to rest during long flights. These birds become dinner for the snakes. Previously, a snake bite almost didn't harm the birds. They were frightened and flew away, leaving the snake without food. But over years of evolution, the island's owners have developed such a potent poison that one bite was enough for a bird to never take off again. There's also a legend that a pirate hid treasures here a long time ago. And, so that no one would ever find it, he brought snakes to guard his gold. Of course, There's no chest with coins here, but the island is attractive for modern pirates, even today. Golden lancehead snakes are an expensive commodity, so bad people often visit this place to hunt the reptiles. That's why the Coast Guard is always on duty around the island. People are forbidden to visit this place. And even if someone manages to get past the guards, they will have to face the rocks. Only biologists and scientists have permission to study the local fauna. A necessary condition for a visit is a doctor's presence in the team, so they can save people from the snake's poison. So we have pirates and hordes of poisonous snakes, but there's something else that makes the island even worse. At this moment, you hear rustling all over the building. Thousands of little paws are tapping on the walls and floor. You look around and see lots of giant cockroaches. Some of them are half the size of your palm. They crawl under your clothes. You and your friends scream in fear and run out of the lighthouse. Quickly, you reach the shore and fall into the water. It seems that not a single cockroach is left under your shirt. But that's not all. You hear a strange buzzing sound. You look around and see a dark cloud of flying beetles forming in the sky. It's locusts! Thousands of flying insects are heading in your direction. To avoid a collision, you dive under the water and wait for the cloud to pass by. You go up to the surface and move to the shore. Fortunately, there are almost no snakes here. You and your friend are afraid to approach the jungle and wait for several hours until rescuers arrive. You're nervously painting a pattern on the sand and make a promise that you'll never revisit this place. Finally, you see the lifeguard boat. You're trying to tell them you got here by accident. They believe you and evacuate you from the island. While you're sailing away, you think about what would happen if many poisonous snakes appeared in a village or a small town. It's difficult to imagine what kind of problems people would face. But in fact, there's no need to imagine anything. There is a place on the planet where locals live next to poisonous cobras, but it doesn't create any chaos. A human can live in peace and harmony with reptiles in that village. Welcome to Shetpal village in India. This place has a population of about 2,600, and it's located in the jungle. It's hot here. Locals are friendly and responsive. If you go into one of the houses, you'll see something that seems impossible. The king cobra, whose venom is one of the most dangerous in the world, calmly crawls around furniture and eats eggs and meat that people give. There's even a special corner for the reptile to relax from the scorching sun, drink water, and have a snack. People are happy about the cobra, as if it was a pet. In the village, cobras are everywhere. They come into houses and schools, crawl through the streets, and keep company during dinner. The locals consider them full-fledged residents. They adore them. The snakes are also used to people and don't see them as dangerous. The coolest thing is there has never been a tragic case in the village because of a poisonous bite. There's no other place in the world where cobras live in such harmony with people.
About a third of all grown-ups have a snake phobia. But if you decide to become an astronaut not to have to deal with them, it might not be a great idea. According to Story Musgrave, there are snakes in space. Musgrave is one of the most experienced astronauts in the world right now. He is the second astronaut who managed to go on 6 space flights and fly on all the space shuttles. With that much experience and time in space, he has to have 1 or 2 space horror stories in his career. Once on a space mission, he looked out of the window and saw something resembling a snake. Musgrave said it was 6 to 8 feet long and looked like a snake. But many people don't believe his story. They claim it was some trash floating in space or something that had detached from the spacecraft. But the astronaut went on another mission and saw the creature again. The first time he spotted it, it could be some detached piece from the spacecraft. But what are the chances of that happening twice? He gave many interviews in which he explained these crazy encounters. Let's hope those snakes stay in space and don't come crashing down on Earth. If they are real, of course. Snake rain would not be fun. As we all know, space is like a giant vacuum chamber with zero air, and sound can't travel there, making this story even more terrifying. To communicate, astronauts have a special system in their suits to exchange information. Young Li Wei shared his terrifying experience, and it's hard to believe it actually happened. You would be terrified if you were alone at home and someone started knocking on your door at night. Of course, if you weren't expecting anyone. Imagine the same scenario, but you're in space. You hear some knocking, you have nowhere to run, you're trapped in a metal can floating into nothingness. Young was sitting in his spacecraft, minding his own business, when he suddenly heard knocking coming from outside. How is it possible? Sound can't travel in space. The noise was unique. The astronaut described it as if someone had been knocking on an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. Li Wei looked outside, but to his surprise, there was nothing there. He investigated a bit more, but couldn't find the source of the sound. When Young returned to Earth, he was eager to tell scientists about what had happened, but he could not recreate the sound. To add fuel to the fire, his colleagues, who were on the same mission from 2005 to 2008, said they had also heard knocking similar to what Young had reported. This is still a mystery. Nobody knows what happened then. Maybe it was just spacecraft noise, like those your house randomly makes. We've already mentioned that sound can't travel in space, but that doesn't stop weird noises. The Apollo 10 mission was one of the most significant space missions ever. So, astronauts had to ensure everything was perfect before they went on a moon exploration journey. 3 people were on that mission: Thomas Stafford, module pilot John Young, and lunar module pilot Eugene Cernan. They had to do tons of gear tests for the upcoming Apollo 11 missions. The astronauts were circling the moon when they heard music coming from somewhere. It wasn't like Ed Sheeran's concert, it was more like constant loud screaming. Then, it was quiet whistling. They were terrified. Imagine being in space for the first time and hearing weird noises. The sounds lasted for a whole hour. The astronauts had never heard anything like that before. The sound was otherworldly and creepy. When they returned to Earth, they didn't know if they should tell someone about their experience because it was hard to believe. Michael Collins, an astronaut from the Apollo 11 mission, later shared that he had also heard this sound. But there is a kind of logical explanation for this. Engineers from NASA said that the sound that they had heard had been caused by the interference with the communication system. So you can relax and throw your tinfoil hat in the trash. But before you do that, Al Worden, an astronaut from the Apollo 15 mission, said that this explanation was unlikely, so we might never find out what really caused the sound. Leroy Chiao was the commander of the International Space Station in 2005. When it comes to space, he's seen a lot of things that can send chills down your spine. One encounter he and his crew had will live on in their head rent-free forever. Chow was sitting in the space station doing his job when he suddenly spotted light from the corner of his eye. He took a closer look, and it resembled an upside-down V, floating and glowing in space. Leroy later explained that he hadn't been scared by the object. Quite the opposite. He was extremely excited to see it, even though he had no idea what it was. His crew also saw the strange object. Chow was convinced he was visited by something not from Earth. His team could also vouch that indeed they saw something unexplainable. The information about this encounter is all over the internet, and many people are skeptical. It could have been anything. There are more than 10,000 satellites in space right now. It could have been a satellite floating in space. Another theory is that those were lights reflecting from a fishing boat on Earth. But who knows? There may be another logical explanation for this phenomenon waiting to be discovered. Horror stories don't stop there. This one is hard to believe, and it's up to you to figure out if it's true. Astronaut Alan Bean was the 4th individual to set foot on the moon's surface. When he was on the Apollo 12 mission, he claimed he saw a unique shape on the moon. It was shiny and shaped like a shoe. It's hard to know what he saw because he passed away in 2018. Chinese lunar rover Yutu-2 also discovered some shiny substance on the moon. Scientists say it was something gel-like. It could be a glaze that formed when something impacted the moon's surface, like a meteorite or something else. But in the future, we might find a better explanation for this strange find. This may sound wicked, but many countries send animals to space before humans follow them. Take Miss Baker, a squirrel monkey, Ham the chimp, and many more. Many of these animals returned to Earth safely and lived happily ever after, like Ham the chimp, that lived for 26 years. But some weren't so lucky. Astronauts are still creeped out when they see animals floating in space. Imagine seeing something like that in a dark vacuum. No matter how tough you are, after that, you will be afraid of your own shadow. This may be sad, but it was an essential step in space exploration. The following horror story comes from space engineer Musa Manarov. This guy came across something that made scientists confused. He was shooting a video of space when he accidentally filmed some shiny object flying in the distance. The thing had a cylindrical shape, and Manarov thought it was something that had detached from the spacecraft. But he was unsure because it moved in a unique way. When you think of a creepy space story, the first thing that comes to your mind is some creature crawling on the spacecraft, or some weird object flying in space. But all those things are highly unlikely to happen. When somebody asked Chris Hadfield what the scariest thing about space was, he said it was asteroids. There are thousands of them in space, and the spacecraft is constantly getting hit by them. Chris said that he'd always heard sounds from asteroids hitting his spacecraft. He also mentioned that the spacecraft's solar panels were covered with holes. And you never know whether a giant asteroid will come and hit your spacecraft.
Around 128 million years ago, give or take, snakes popped up out of nowhere and started thriving on Earth, eventually branching out into around 4,000 species we have today. But it's not just because they ditched their limbs and got all long and slithery. Even though there are 25 groups of limbless lizards, snakes are the one who really hit the jackpot in terms of diversity. To figure out what makes snakes so successful, scientists looked at over 60,000 snake and lizard specimens from museums all over the world. According to them, snakes have been evolving faster than lizards in key ways, which gives them the upper hand when it comes to exploring new opportunities. So if you think this is creepy, hey, I'm right there with you. But let's push forward. One major factor of their success is their feeding habits. With their flexible skulls and keen sense of smell, snakes can eat animals way bigger than their heads and track down prey like champs. When dinosaurs got wiped out around 66 million years ago, snakes were ready to adapt to the changing world and fill those empty spots. Now, we're not sure why snakes evolved so quickly, but it's clear that there's something special in the grand scheme of evolution. Just like the sudden explosion of flowering plants, these macroevolutionary singularities have shaped life on our planet in unexpected ways. Now, snakes can be found almost everywhere on Earth, showing off a wide range of traits and habitats. They can be found in deserts, rainforests, grasslands, and even deep oceans. All snakes are predators, munching on different prey, including insects, small vertebrates, other snakes, and sometimes even larger mammals or humans. Ow! However, you won't see any snakes in Ireland. Why? Well, one of the most famous legends about St. Patrick involves him driving these reptiles out of Ireland. Still, experts think snakes never lived in Ireland to begin with, so it's more of a symbolic story than anything else. There are a few more places in the world where snakes don't exist, like Iceland, Greenland, New Zealand, and Antarctica. New Zealand's lack of snakes is especially intriguing, considering its proximity to snake-heavy Australia. The reason for this seems to be the country's ever-changing climate, which makes it difficult for snakes to thrive. Now, even though New Zealand is snake-free, Sea snakes occasionally make an appearance in its waters. The yellow-bellied sea snake and the yellow-lipped sea crate are known to visit the island every now and then. So when it comes to what country has the most snakes, Brazil takes the prize. With over 375 species calling it home, Brazil has a mix of harmless and dangerous snakes. The country's vast rainforests provide a perfect habitat for these reptiles, including famous constrictors like the anaconda, the boa constrictor, and the emerald tree boa. Brazil is also home to venomous snakes, such as the fer-de-lance and coral snakes. However, if you fear going to a Rio carnival just because you're terrified of Brazilian snakes, I've got some news for you. Out of 4,000 snake species in the world, only around 600 are venomous, and only about 200 of them can cause harm to humans. So, fatal snake bites are less common than people might think. Chances you stumble upon a bad snake are like 5%. Now, it's hard to say exactly how many individual snakes there are out there, as they tend to, keep to themselves. However, scientists can make estimates about the number of specific species. For example, they believe that there could be as many as 1 million common garter snakes in the wild. Cute little guys. Unlike the super widespread common garter, the St. Lucia racer is one of the rarest snakes in the world. It had quite a roller coaster of a story. Thought to be extinct, then found again, then lost, and finally rediscovered in 2012. The survivors are spending time together on a teeny island called Maria Major, after being wiped out on the mainland by mongooses and other invasive critters that like to snack on these harmless snakes. Another reason snakes hit an evolutionary jackpot is because they have this cool thing that they're basically solar-powered and depend on outside sources of heat or light. People often say they're cold-blooded, but that's not entirely accurate. Their blood isn't cold. The right word for them is ectothermic, which means their body temperature can change and is controlled by the environment. While mammals and birds can keep their temperature steady, reptiles must soak up the sun or find other ways to warm themselves up. Now, some snakes do not lay eggs, defying the traditional classification of reptiles as egg layers. While it may have been taught at school that all reptiles lay eggs, nature has its exceptions. About 70% of snakes lay eggs, but those living in colder environments give birth to live young because eggs would not survive in such conditions. Nature always has a way of challenging our expectations and classifications. Snakes are a successful group of tetrapods, even though they don't have the 4 key-footed feature that tetrapods are named after. Despite this, or maybe because of it, snakes are super diverse. It might seem like this diversity dates way back to the times of dinosaurs, over 100 million years ago. But modern snakes seem to have emerged more recently. Fossils and DNA suggest that snakes started to spread out and evolve after the mass extinction event that wiped out dinosaurs. They took advantage of the empty habitats and niches left behind by the long-gone species. In terms of movement, snakes are super flexible and can crawl, burrow, climb, swim, and some can even fly. The ancient ancestors of snakes were quite different from what we see today, with some species even having well-developed limbs. Snakes continue to evolve through the late Cretaceous period, with various species appearing around the world. Only a handful of modern snake families emerged later, millions of years after the extinction of dinosaurs. The snake fossil record is patchy, making it hard to piece together their evolutionary history. To make sense of it all, scientists turn to DNA analysis. Molecular clock techniques help estimate when various snake lineages split off from each other, suggesting that most of the modern snake diversity is younger than dinosaurs. Only a few snake lineages survived the mass extinction event at the end of the Cretaceous. But these few survivors managed to give rise to the incredible diversity of snakes today. Some snake families persisted for millions of years until they eventually went extinct, while others thrived and diversified in the aftermath of the mass extinction event. This pattern of survival and rapid diversification resembles what we see in the bird and mammal fossil records after the extinction of dinosaurs. The ability to burrow, hunt in the dark, and go long periods without food helped some snakes survive the chaos after the mass extinction. Their flexibility and adaptability allowed them to find shelter and thrive when other species couldn't. Snakes can be some of the scariest animals around. Most snake species are harmless and don't bother humans. Even if they wanted to, most snakes are too small to pose a real threat to people. But there are some big snakes out there that can eat surprising things. The largest animal ever eaten by a snake was a 150-pound hyena devoured by an African rock python. I'll bet that hyena wasn't laughing then, huh? Before that, the biggest meal on record was a 130-pound impala eaten by a rock python. That's impressive. The biggest snakes in the world are constrictors. They tend to suffocate their prey. To eat large prey, the snake itself has to be huge. African rock pythons, green anacondas, reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, Indian pythons, and amethystine pythons are all contenders for the title of the largest snake in the world. They can grow to incredible lengths and weights. And that's it. I'm done with snakes now. Ew.